Why? Why you have to
I
hurt?
think she went
All
there.
right, we are live.
I just check our feed to make sure that we're live. We are in fact live. All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out on this lovely Monday evening to the presentation of the 2023-24 budget to the Board of Trustees. First of all, I'd like to thank our lovely treasurer, Suzanne, for spending you should log how many hours we spent on this.
We spend a lot of time on it.
It was a lot of time going over the spending of where we are this year, forecasting where we expect to be, and then analyzing everything to understand where we're going to, what we'd like to do for 23 and 24. So here's our budget. First bunch of items we have, we'll go over the revenue. So you have the nice chart, and I always say look at the pretty picture because it tells a better story. Our first category is real property taxes and tax items. So we are looking at a small 1.5% increase in our taxes to meet all of our expense projections for this year, which is a very small percentage.
When you see the fire budget, it's really not a 1.5% tax increase to the taxes. It's more towards the fire because they.
So that
To
being
cover
said,
the fire contract.
so that being said, we know we don't collect them in Hassett fire tax, but we collect the port, and I think they kept their budget at an increase of
Small, very
2
small.
point something percent. It was very reasonable. On the other hand, we got our friends in Roslyn, who not only increased their fire budget by 6% due to the reassessment, Flower Hill, so we know we all got our properties reassessed, and it's that 5-year workup phase. The fire department decided not to do the 5-year workup phase. So instead, we got
Yeah.
everyone got hit up front. So some villages went up a lot, like Flower Hill, and some of the villages went down. We appealed to Roslyn. So Roslyn and us appealed to the fire department to do a 5-year phase, and they refused. So unfortunately, and I don't have the number here, but I have it on another presentation. You have it. Oh, it's actually in our budget.
It's in our budget.
It shows what our fire tax expense is going up.
22.41%.
That's just from Roslyn. So it stinks.
And that's on page 7 if you wanted to look at it.
That's better.
Mid-page,
And then
fire
I can-
contract
Then I
Roslyn.
can answer my Port Washington question. It's 2.4%.
Right, there you go.
So it's pretty close. So yes, unfortunately, those of us who live in Roslyn, we're going to pay significantly higher fire tax, not village tax, but our fire tax. So that kind of works its way into the first item on our revenue. Second line item is our non-property taxes. That's going to include our pilots, gross utilities gross receipts tax, and franchise fees. So thank you, Bill Clemency, for working on those franchise fees. Home and community service, that's death certificates. Is that small?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to get you, and I'm not being.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
The fair readers?
Thank you then.
So that's going down a little bit. We really can't predict the amount of death certificates we're going to do. The use of money and property, that's going up. So that's mostly our increased interest. So A, interest rates are up, and B, we pivoted last year to that NICLAS investment, which is giving
Yielding
us
quite a bit of money for us,
substantial returns. So that's why that is
thankfully.
small money, but at least it's up significantly. Licenses and permits, that's mostly building permits. Unfortunately, we predicted that, so this year, our building permits are going to be close, but not exactly to budget, so we're a little under. So for 24, we got a little more conservative, with the interest rates going up. It's a real crapshoot on how much building is going to happen, so I'd rather be conservative and go under on our building permits than go higher. So that's why that number is down decently amount compared to last year. Fines and forfeitures, that's the monies we get from our court, and that's going up because we are receiving more violations that are issued in this village. Miscellaneous, that is minor sales, gifts and donations, and various unclassified revenue. That's a very small amount of our budget. State aid, that is chips, mortgage tax, and grants. And the last item is the fund balance. That's the monies we're going to take out of our current reserve funds.
If we should need it. And if
Correct.
you look at this year's, we're at a point where we don't believe we're gonna need them at the end of the year, so it's just gonna stay in our fund.
Assuming everything holds true with no large expenses, which we should, we have 2 months left, and that we continue with the upward trend on building permits.
Right.
So we should be okay with minimizing the use of the fund balance. Ask away.
There's a big dip in state aid.
Oh, because for the last 2 years, we've received the ARPA funding,
Oh, so
No
this
more
is really,
pandemic.
it's the state aid plus.
plus, right,
Plus
because in the
federal
past
fund.
2 years, we've gotten,
It lumps itself unfortunately in federal aid. but yes, that also-
I understand the explanation now.
it makes sense, right?
Sorry,
And if you
on
want
my,
to get technical, the federal government gives the money to the state and
You're-
they
that you're-
distribute it.
Right, that's true, that's true.
so I
That is-
probably should have added it to my little cheat sheet, but I didn't write it. So,
No, it would be one thing that might,
yes,
Like a red
Come
flag.
Off the page.
Right.
it's a big number, right?
Yeah.
yep. And this is the same pie chart that we've been using for years that people seem to like. Now let's go to our expenses by category. So really, we don't need to do much over our legislative. So legislative, that's
It's just the
small, teeny
trustees,
stuff.
you know, if you take a class,
And
things like
trainings
that.
and things like
trainings,
that.
yeah, absolutely.
Judicial, that includes the running of our court, so that includes Sue's salary. Executive, that is my budget for courses and for various miscellaneous mayor things. Finance, that is our auditor and our accountant.
Mhm.
And we've been fortunate that they haven't raised our rates yet. Staff clerk, that's Ronnie, that's Suzanne. That's for all the expenses within that department, which gets pretty long.
Why is it down? Sorry. Do we have a vacancy?
Are we losing a salary?
That, let me see. Well, that's the number.
30% decrease.
Well, our code enforcer is less expensive because Robert was
Right,
here
Robert was
full-time, Jack
full-time.
is part-time, but that's not that
Yeah,
whole
it's
number.
not 116,000.
No, I have a cheat sheet here that I use. Let's get back to.
We'll go back to that. Yeah, we'll go back
Let's
to
get
it.
back to it, because I
Make
might
a
have,
note
I
and
might
we'll
be
go
able to
back.
pull
Look at
something
what's
from one of my things. Legal other, that's for Jeff.
And
No,
there's,
see, Jack comes into code enforcement.
Mm,
That's it, that's, we'll get there.
okay,
So our legal other, that again is our attorney, and that's if we have to farm out for the tax certiorari. Shared services, that's various things that involve the building. So we've got building maintenance and equipment, various election expenses, et cetera, et cetera. So everything that really pretty much runs this building. Building equipment, supplies and maintenance, the telephone, light and gas, our water, various contracted services, and building repairs and maintenance. So that's how we get to that number. Special items, that's our insurance, that's our municipal dues. So that's Hempstead Harbor, Protect, Manhasset Bay, NCVOA, NICOM,
Scanning
et cetera.
programs. This is the scanning and the programs. We don't have it in the budget this year.
That's what it is.
Thank you.
Because it's
It's a
contracted
one-time-
services.
It was a one-time.
I knew it'd come back to me eventually.
Okay.
What's that?
So remember
That
we did,
big drop in monies on
And
We're
the
not,
staff-
we're not
and
doing
the
all the
staff
scanning we
line,
did last.
It was the scanning and the, all the new software.
Right, so it's contracted services in addition to
Gotcha.
payroll.
and a lot of that monies from last year did come from ARPA.
Right.
So thank you, federal government, for paying for that. Back now to, we did the shared services,
Code.
we did the special items.
You're up to code.
Thank you. Code enforcement, that's down because we are using, so we have a new code enforcer and we're utilizing his hours differently than we did with our previous code enforcer. That's why we have the dip in 17% there. Fire prevention and control, that's up, and that's up for the reasons I mentioned before with our friends at the Roslyn Fire Department.
That's totally out of our.
Correct.
We have to collect it, but we're just a pass-through, really.
Right.
So the building department, that is Peter and that is Heather, and that is the software that they use for their jobs. And that's why we have a $22,000 decrease, because we already spent the monies for municity in 2022-23. So there's going to be less expenditures here. Highway, that is everything that we do for our road work. And as part
And
of
as part of their, I think, their payroll too, the highway department.
it's equipment, it's materials, it's their gas, it's the maintenance,
Mm.
it is the other expenses. And then we have the three gentlemen's salaries.
Rich's salary.
We've got Rich's salaries there. We've got, we're going to do a seasonal people again, but we're going to do half the amount than we did last year. So we're going to only budget for 5,000 instead of 10. And then all the other contractual services that we need, including our roads budget. So I will go over the roads budget last, because I have another slide to talk about roads budget. Question?
No.
Okay. Economic assistance,
His publicity and our
Web.
the park.
and that includes the park. So we're going to do this year for the park. Interesting thing. Rich and I were trying to figure out how to kind of do more with less. And we're going to start saving our large debris in the park. And we're going to chip it ourselves. We're going to get access to a chipper. So we can start creating our own mulch for certain areas where we don't need to have dyed mulch. So we're going to save money on tipping fees. And then we're going to save the environment by reusing mulch instead of throwing it out. And then we're going to save money by using our own mulch instead of having to go and buy expensive mulch. So that's going to be pretty.
Win-win-win.
Let's see how well we do with it, but yes, but that's the
That's the
plan.
plan.
That's the
That's the
concept.
plan.
So soon, to the left of the salt shed, you'll start seeing, and that's the fenced-in area, we're going to start saving chippable materials there.
Just hope the boys operate the rented chip first.
They will- they-
In a safe
they-
manner and
they-
nobody
they
loses
will.
a finger or more.
I
Um,
don't think you just lose a finger with a chipper.
Sanitation, so sanitation, that's our contract with Dejana.
And
That
our,
doesn't change because
and
that's
our
our
tipping
5 years.
fees.
And our tipping fees, which hopefully should go down a little bit.
Yeah.
But right now I budgeted for the
Sure.
same, just in case this program doesn't work out. Employee benefits, that's retirement, that's all of
Medical.
our medical and dental and eye and all the other lovely insurances that we have. And then lastly, we have our transfer to other funds. So what we're doing there is just like we did this current budget year, moving $50,000 to a truck fund. And then we're going to move another $50,000 to our big capital reserve fund. So that's where we're saving for other projects, payloader, if we eventually need the new street sweeper, which we shouldn't. Any work we want to do in the park that's extra, maybe add some paving to make a little, continue the existing trails in there. And we could use those funds for road repaving if we need be, and other technology upgrades. But I think we're good on the technology upgrades. I think once we're done with Municity and the other stuff, we'll totally be in the cloud. We could retire our server, and I don't think there's any other hardware we need to deal with. The goal originally was to purchase a new pickup truck for 23-24, but because I think we can squeeze another year out of the pickup truck, we're going to use capital reserve funds this year that we have in 23 to purchase a replacement for the golf cart, because that golf cart's dying. So we need a
What's
more
it
robust
really
material.
called? It's not- I
A
mean,
gator, we're gonna get a gator.
A gator is it's a UTV. It's not an ATV, it's a
utility
utility
vehicle.
vehicle.
Mhm.
So Rich and I have been looking at that, and we need to replace one of the large ride-on mowers, which is really dead. And actually, we ordered the new mower and we ordered the trailer already. That should be coming hopefully soon, because we'll need it for the spring. And the UTV, the first one Rich looked at, ended up being a little too big for our needs in the park. It just kind of won't fit. So we're looking at a different type of vehicle. So that's about $35,000 in expenditures for 23, 24. That's fine because we have the capital reserve fund, so we could do that. If you look at the same numbers we talked about without fire, that just gives you the next sheet. So you can just see how the percentages change.
Something's wrong.
That's not
Why
right.
is Highway 518 on the one and 458 on the other?
Because I made a change and didn't do it on both spreadsheets.
Ah.
Good catch. So originally, actually now, if you want to jump ahead a little bit, go to the last page in your presentation here. Originally, I worked with Rich and I worked with Steve too, like usual. And the page before, or 2 pages before, has our annual, has the road work
Yeah, what's that?
rating thing. This is the 22 version. Rich is still working on the 23 version. But based on some of our plotting and planning and trying to do more with less, the original plan was to do some work this year using the grant money from Senator
21,
Phillips,
22.
and that was going to be it.
Mhm.
But based on, then we were going to look at Stonytown for 24, 25. So we're fortunate that this year we had a very light snow and the road lasted longer than we expected. But we're expecting next year the road really to be really need to be repaved. And if we have a rough winter, that's really going to exacerbate the conditions. So originally the guesstimate was Stonytown was going to be about $500,000. But after speaking with Steve today and doing a pretty good estimate on all these costs, we got it down to 415. And that's projecting next year's a raise in the cost of asphalt, et cetera. So we were able to free up another $60,000 to use that for this year, 23, 24. So that's why it's wrong, because I didn't change it on one of the spreadsheets and I did on the other.
The CHIPS
So the
rollover
right one
was
is the
22, 23.
The lower number is the correct one or the higher number?
22, 23.
Yes, let's make the change.
Well, I'll just have to change it.
Is the 518 the right number or the 458?
The higher number is correct.
Okay.
So I'll redo that and I can send it out to everybody. So yeah, we just made that change this morning.
That's, yeah.
So I'm glad I didn't print everything on when I finished this Friday night, because Suzanne and I were working on some things and we
So
just made
this
some
has
of
got
those
to be the
changes.
5.
So that's why we made that change. So that's our roadwork project. I think it's good because we're trying to use as little as we can with taxpayer dollars. We have CHIP monies and we have a grant and we have money saved in our CHIP fund. And if you look at the capital equipment slide, again, that's kind of the grading of why we're saving our capital funds to be able to replace items on a scheduled basis and have the proper funds in place to do so. Again, we're lucky. That payloader is 10 years past replacement. And we baby it, so it's doing well.
So,
Go
the
ahead.
dump truck 2020. I was wondering where's the new truck? That's the new truck.
Right, there's
So we haven't bought much in the last few years.
well, they did buy the,
Just the big truck.
big truck.
In 2019, and the Arrow board, that was it.
right. Well, we do our own maintenance on a lot of
Yeah, no,
stuff.
that's good.
So, thank you, Rich and everybody in the highway department. And we try to keep our equipment in great shape. I mean, sadly, the utility cart, it's dead, got to replace that. And the ride-on mower died, but, we kind of been planning. It's actually interesting. If you look at our estimated replacement date, 2022, so the cart died. It lasted an extra, it lasted an extra year than predicted.
Yeah, the pickup truck also is getting old.
Well, we were going to place that this year, but because
Okay,
the mower went and because the golf cart is on its last leg, Rich agreed that we could wait a year for the pickup truck and also we didn't use it because we didn't have snow
Right.
cover this year.
Didn't
So
take a lot of
it didn't take
abuse.
any abuse at all.
Mm.
So we were able to expedite the expenditures on some smaller items instead of the larger
We
items.
should have said, because it seems like every year, whenever they plow snow, there'd be some problem. The plow would break, or there'd be a bushing that would break. So we probably saved money this year on repairs.
Yeah, I mean, every time they have a big snow, they have to replace all the plow blades.
Well,
Yeah, there's
but if you
always
do,
something
but if you
that-
do look through the budget, this year we did go over on some truck maintenance because not on the big Kenworth, but on the dump truck, they needed to do some work on the salt conveyor belt. And there was some hydraulic issues with it. So, we're spending money to keep it on the road, but at some point it might go. We've got some holes in the
All of
bed.
us are like that.
We've got holes in the
Not
bed.
just the equipment.
Rich is gonna have the beds rewelded. We're gonna possibly do the rhino lining on some of these things to help keep things last a little longer. But, yes, we gotta replace the big dump truck and we gotta replace one of the pickup trucks. So that's why we're being fiscally conservative trustees and we're putting money in capital reserve funds specifically for these projects. So that's that on that. And other than fixing that slide, and we answered the question about the scanning for staff clerk other, is there any other questions?
Looks good.
Okay, so you'll have a new version of this by Monday. So
I
we'll
love
see
that
what
chart.
roads. Oh, I love it too, because we'll know,
Favorite chart.
and I think we'll have an idea of what roads.
You can't
I think we're gonna
appreciate it
do,
unless it's
I'm not gonna name the
It's
roads
not
yet.
colored.
I think we're gonna be able to
It's
do
the top.
2 roads definitely
Because it's got all the.
for this year,
and this
2
one,
roads
right?
definitely, and depending on how the bids come in,
This-
hopefully a
This is
third
the
road.
one. This
But
is the
again,
one.
None of our, like I bike ride all of it. None of our roads are really, really bad. They're all fairly decent, I mean, look, you think of the
Thank
Muncie
goodness.
Park up until last year. I mean,
Oh,
you couldn't even drive down Park Avenue. Even our bad roads up here are not that bad.
So that is the good thing. Like if you compare it to Northern Boulevard, forget it. We're
right
luxury.
now?
Yes.
I don't know what's going on with that.
Though they are repaving Northern Boulevard maybe this summer from Old Northern Boulevard very, very far in towards the
You ever,
Queens
you ever
border.
go toward Little Neck on Northern Boulevard?
Oh, it's
Oh.
It's
terrible.
been like that for years.
The
I don't-
state says
I
they're
know.
going to be fixing it
You
this year.
could-
They
you
claim.
could lose
You
a
can
tire.
remember
We've received some of the
that
notification that they're gonna do it.
everything's done, and I lived
awful.
in Great Neck for 30 years.
It's awful, that road. I don't even drive that. I'm afraid, like, even an SUV, I don't, it's
Oh,
terrible.
It's bone jarring.
So our roads are kept well. I think they're well maintained. That's the key.
We maintain,
Guys are
and
always
you know why
out,
also?
dry
It's
year.
because we
And we
paid
utilize
what
the chip
needs to be
monies, too.
fixed.
Right.
Yeah, and
That's
we also
right, 'cause
take
the state
patch and
helps
we
us.
also take good care of.
So that being said, Rich this year, I believe, is going to we're gonna rent a hot box instead of cold patch. He's gonna try renting hot box and trying to see
Makes
how
a
that
big
works.
difference when
And
you're patching
if it
those
works well
holes.
for us,
Yeah, 'cause
we'll look into
hot box
purchasing a
doesn't
hot
have to
box.
help.
We
Right,
do our
Yeah,
own
when the
cold
weather's
real
just-
patch
yeah.
paving as need be.
Every time you go over it,
So
the
if there's
pimples fall
any
out.
other questions, then I will call this meeting to, do I have to take a motion to close the meeting?
We need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
All in favor?
Thank you all for attending.
Okay.
We'll see you all on Monday.
You worried about eating?
Yeah, with the water.
You didn't eat? Oh.
And he's got a meeting next, right?
Did
Yeah.
you see it? There's
No, I ate.
snacks in the
I ate.
office.